And I'm Tony.
And we are the Sultry Sisters. We're a community-based organization that empowers women to live healthy and creative lives in North County, San Diego, and recently DC.
We curate events, workshops, mixers, and meetups centered around women's arts, wellness, and sisterhood.
Our mission is to empower women to live vibrant and shine bright through creative expression and conscious holistic living.
Our vision is to create a safe space that provides women the arts and wellness resources that are affordable and accessible.
So far, we partnered with Dancing Soul Boutique, Village Rock Shop, Carlsbad Village Yoga Co-op, and nonprofit organization Leap to Success. To find out more information about us and to sign up for our future events, visit sultrysisters.com.
You can also find us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Sultry Sisters.
We hope to see you soon.
Hey, welcome everyone to our first Sultry Hangout of 2023. So I'm Tony.
And I'm Alyssa, and we are the Sultry Sisters. We are back, we are here, and we are ready to get into this book club series.
Yes, so happy New Year to everyone. Alyssa and I actually are in the same space, like physical location. We're both in San Diego. We're just in different rooms of our house. And so we've missed you all. So of course we want to hear from you all on where you are tuning in from and what you're sipping on. So comment below. And welcome to all the new viewers, the new book club attendees, participants. If you're not familiar with our YouTube Live, so we're on YouTube and Facebook Live, and essentially as you comment, we can pin your comments up to the screen. And if you have questions throughout, we'll also be able to see it and pin it on the screen as well.
This is an interactive discussion. This is a hangout. So this book club series is a expansion of our Sultry Sister Hangouts. We started on IG where we met weekly on Sundays talking about all things soul care, sisterhood, sustainability. We interviewed some amazing people, friends, and folks that we're community with. So we're excited to start the year with the book club because we ended 2022 with the book club reading Atlas of the Heart. So it's become like something that our viewers really like loved and to engage with. So we decided to bring this book club series back, but continuing. So stay tuned, y'all. We'll be doing this more than once a year. That's how we started.
Yes. And so welcome to everyone. We have Kyle Moore back. Yes, Kyle joined us for our Atlas of the Heart book club. So thank you for coming back, Dr. Kyle Moore. Checking in from Wheaton, Maryland with some sweet tea. Nice. We love some sweet tea.
We love tea. I'm drinking some hot green tea right now. It's not cooled down enough, but I'm waiting. I'll be sipping throughout the hangout tonight.
And then I have some Tulsi and hibiscus tea, which is perfect for what we're talking about today. So if you don't know why we're on live, we are talking about Rest is Resistance for our book club for January of this year. We are super, super excited to be discussing this book club with you all. And so essentially with our book clubs, each week we'll be talking about a different part of the book. So we'll be meeting every Wednesday, this time, same place. And you can join even if you haven't read the book. So if you are reading along with us, that's awesome. If you already finished it, you are A++ student. But even if you're like, I haven't heard of this book, you can still join the live. Everyone is welcome, from avid readers to just rest enthusiasts. So we're really excited to be on this journey with you all as we start the new year.
Yeah, so if you're wanting to know more about the Sultry Sisters and to learn more about joining this book club, look at the ticker below. It says learn more at sultrysisters.com/book club. There you can learn more about the book that we're reading, where you can buy it. We have a link that is linked to a local bookstore here in San Diego, Libalula Books. So we are really not only about reading books and being in community with each other. We also want to promote buying books locally. And if not also getting it from your library. So fun fact, if you do have a library card and you do attend a library, you can always request a book. So if you go to your local library in the next week and they do not have this book, you can hit up your librarian and request it. It's something that they do if they can. So highly advise that. There's also audiobooks. So we're really just promoting not only literacy, but really conversation around literature and topics that we are passionate about.
Yes. And I also see in the comments, Krista is joining us as well. So hi, Krista. And Krista's talking that she enjoys Tulsi tea as well. Yes, so good and so on topic for today. So yeah, thank you all for joining. And you can put also in the comments below if you are reading along with us, if you're just here for the ride, if you're like, I just love resting and I want to be in conversation with people about rest. Let us know. And of course, you probably are watching us on YouTube, but some of y'all might be from Facebook or other places. So to make sure you get the alerts when we go live, you can subscribe to Sultry Sisters on YouTube. You can just search our name and we pop up. And definitely check out our website, sultrysisters.com/book club, and you'll have all the info about the schedule. So we're going every Wednesday until February 1st for this January book club. And then February, we have a book club as well. So it'll continue. So if you're into reading, if you're into book clubs, this is the space for you.
Ooh, I love this, Krista. Finished the intro last night. I took a 2-hour nap today. Snaps to that. I love it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. So our theme as Sultry Sisters for the new year is rest and reset. So we wanted to, start the year by like connecting to ourselves, connecting with our community. Like us Sultry Sisters as our collective has been off and on a resting period and on period since the summer, since we had our first ever summer solstice Arts and Wellness Festival. So we wanted to start the new year just really slowly and steady instead of doing a lot of things. I mean, we still have many other programs going on, but we wanted to center it around rest and also the concept of reset of like, okay, this is a new calendar year, right? We're still in winter season, but how can we, cultivate these spaces for rest? And maybe that's resetting some of our routines. Maybe that's resetting some of our commitments to ourselves. Maybe that's resetting, what rest or what just our lifestyle will look like as we continue into the new year.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. So for those of you who've been with Sultry Sisters since the beginning, you know that our programming happens in a cycle. We're all about pairing our programs with the seasons as well as our cycle of the year. And so to have the theme of rest and reset was an affirmation that like we are in the winter season. This is like for our festival, our first festival that we did last year was the summer solstice. So it was like the start of a lot of energy. So we really want to make our programming honor the season that we're in and affirm that this is a time to, slow down, to rest. This is the time, even though it's the new calendar year for basically Western culture, this is also a time astrologically the end of the astrological energy. So this is where we're tying things up. This is where we're thinking about what we want to let go. So the rest and reset is what we're tapping into, not just like the season, but also the astrological energies that be with us.
Yes. And also since it's winter season, right? Like nature and like animals, they hibernate, right? And they have time for stillness, for doing nothing but just resting and being in a restful state. And so we wanted to also channel that energy, which is again what we're talking about all through this book, but just what does rest look like, especially for Black and brown folks, especially folks who, we're just in this capitalistic system. So yeah, also going with nature. So if you're into nature, then this book and this theme also is right on point.
Exactly.
So we also wanted to check in with everyone to see, what is your new year intention or theme? So I know that sometimes people word it as New Year's resolutions, but language is powerful. So we think more of intentions or themes for our years. So I don't know if Alyssa, you want to share? I can share. I have been reflecting on this for the
I've
last
definitely
couple
been
of
thinking
days.
about I've been thinking about my word as well, and I really appreciate you uplifting that words are powerful. And I also wanted to share with everybody, like, today, yeah, you might want to share like the word or the thing you're thinking about, but again, this is the winter season, so this is the time to like reflect. So although I will be sharing like a word that I'm kind of chewing on, a word that I'm kind of reflecting on what was my word last year and how I want to move forward, I'm still in that phase of like drafting. So it's not like I'm like, this is my word, I'm going to go. For me, that's going to be March. That's when I'm going to feel that energy of like action. So for me, the things I've been thinking about is I ended my like my very busy season of working as a performer and a choreographer in San Diego in like October. And ever since then, I've been doing a lot of things that have been pleasurable, like a lot of play. And that was my word last year, was like play. And so for me moving forward, I'm like, okay, like I had a lot of space to play. So this next year, I'm really focusing on the word clarity. So being more clear and defined with all the things that I've been working on. I feel like generally I've been thinking about play, generally pleasure, generally abundance, but I want to get like more clarity on what that looks like for me and get more defined in like the rituals, the relationships, the environment that really helps me thrive. So clarity is like defining things.
I like that. Yeah, my theme our word for last year, 2022, was ease, which I felt like, especially towards like the last quarter of the year, I really was leaning into that and was like, okay, if I don't feel like doing that, I'm not going to, which was really nice. And things, especially with Sultry, was very easeful for me. And then different things in my personal life like became very easeful the second half of the year. So I felt like I was able to embody that easeful way of being. And so I wanted to continue that flow. I was like, okay, I like this. Like, I want more of this. So through my reflections, my word so far for 2023, of course, I'm going to take more time, but is soft, or like being soft, and like leaning into softness and slowness. And then also, even before really diving super deep into rest is resistance, my mantra or kind of phrase for this year is connect to spirit. So as I continue to read this book, I'm like, so many
Oh yeah.
synchronicities and things. So this year I want to be softer, connect to spirit. So like my spiritual soul care practices, and just trusting myself, trusting spirit, like all of that. So this is lovely. I feel like for us, Alyssa and I, like this is very on brand. Well, of course, we curated this book, but even before choosing this book, we were kind of already on this path. So that's why we chose Rest is Resistance for January, because we were like, so much of what we've been talking about as sisters, what we've been talking about as our collective, has been right on brand of this book and Trisha's work. So we wanted to just continue these conversations and these dialogues, because we think healing is also in the collective healing, like us just joining together right now is a part of that.
Mm-hmm. And we have some people sharing in the comments. So we have Kyle shared, definitely want to bring a spirit of rest and reflection into the new year. Still thinking about a good word, but I want to also lean more into doing things I want to do rather than what I have to do. Ooh, I love that. Yes.
Yes. And then Krista shared, my word is embody. Ooh, I love that. Being more present in my body and thinking about the ways I can transform myself internally and externally to feel more embodied. But before embody, rest was going to be my word. And it seems like then the rest of like, it seems like rest is also going to be a huge part of my year.
Yes.
Yes, I love that for you,
Mhm.
Krista. And yeah, sultry, we love the word embody. we use like 3 words: embrace, embody, and empower a
Empower.
lot. So
Mhm.
all of that, your reflections, Krista, kind of go into what we usually
Yes.
share in our collective. So thank you all for sharing.
Yes. And I wanted to
So
share
much
too.
alignment.
Yeah, very aligned with Kyle's comment about, wanting to lean more into doing things that you want to do rather than you have to do. I resonate with that because that's my word clarity, like being clear, like what is mine and what is yours? What's
Mm.
for me and what's for you? So it's a continuation of boundaries. We read that book last year, Set Boundaries, Find Peace.
Mhm.
And so I feel like everything is like culmination. Like, okay, now that I've set boundaries, now I feel like I can rest.
Mhm.
What a thought when we have space and time. So I'm really vibing with like all that we are leaning into this season.
Yeah, yeah. And I invite everyone to, like, take your time when it comes to these reflections and meditations. Like, you don't have to have an answer now, your answer can change. Um, and also, Alyssa, when you're talking about clarity and Kyle was sharing his reflections too, I thought of discernment as well. Like, when you say, like,
Mm.
knowing what's mine, knowing what's others, knowing like just myself. And so much of Trisha's work is about that. Like, nah, I'm enough, I'm good. Like, my ancestors have done this one. So it's not new, but also my ancestors have so much wanted me to be in this space, right? So
Mhm.
I love that. And that's why I wore my butterfly t-shirt, because I
Yay.
feel like butterflies are my spirits and guides and ancestors talking to me.
I
So I
want
was
my
like, let's
shells.
bring in this. Yes, and my shells too. And then Krista commented, yeah, and advocating for yourself, hard yes and hard no. Exactly. So I'm like, so we're all on the same
We're
page here.
all on
I
the
love it.
same page. And speaking of knowing what's mine and what's yours, we like to, as a collective, discuss, how we define, how we relate to a word. So we're gonna ask y'all, what does rest mean to you? When you think of the word rest, how do you relate to that word? What does it look like in your life? We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, for me, resting is that slowness and that stillness. Um, for me, rest comes from being present and just
Mhm.
being. And so much, especially in this past year and like 2 years, has just be like, because I was in grad school and I finished in 2021, and there's always go, go, go. There's always assignments. Then, like, being an entrepreneur, there's always something you have to do. Like, when people ask, like, are you busy? Yes, like, I am busy, but there's definitely this reclamation and this like push to be like, okay, but can I and I will just be and like do less. So that is what rest means to me, is like when I'm doing nothing but being, which is also everything.
Well, yeah, exactly. For me, when I think of rest, I think with the times I feel rested or I'm resting is when I no longer have an attachment to time.
Mm,
Like that's when I'm resting. Like when I'm sleeping, do I have an attachment to time? No, there's an alarm clock that wakes me up, Like
mhm,
when I am doing an art practice, creative expression, when I'm, listening to music and dancing in my room, whenever I'm walking and hiking, like unless I have a watch or some type of notification technology on me, like my rest is when I no longer have an attachment. Like I literally forget that there's a time construct, going on. So that's when I feel like
yes.
I'm rested or resting.
Yeah, like your reflection, Melissa, makes me think of just the other day on New Year's Day, we were with friends and then we just randomly started painting. And I was in a zone, my rest zone for 4 hours. I was just like painting and I lost track of time. I was just very present. I was just so joyful. And that's not always me. That, like, sometimes, especially at the beginning of the year, like sultry, we're trying to prepare for stuff. So like I typically probably would be like on my phone or computer. So it was nice to, yeah, like you said, escape that pressure of like having to do something,
Mhm.
and just being for fun.
Yes, I feel like Kyle, we on the same wavelength. For
Right?
me, rest feels like freedom from obligation. Ooh, freedom from obligation, that agency to do what you want with your time, less on the
Mm,
calendar. Yes,
mm,
yes, yes. And Krista says, ooh, I think reading the intro changed that for me. I heard something recently about the difference between rest and rejuvenation. Let's sit on
mm.
that. I like that, rest and rejuvenation.
Mhm.
That makes me think of that there's different types of rest. So we wanted to share, like, there are actually 7 types of rest. So when people think of rest, Trisha even says in the intro, like, rest is more than naps. It's more than
Mhm.
sleeping. That is just like the tip of the iceberg. And so there's 7 types of rest. There's physical rest, that's the napping. There's mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, emotional, social, and spiritual. So let us know in the chat if any of these resonate with you, if those 7 like kind of make you start to think about the different rests that you partake in, or maybe a rest that you never even considered that you should take. So rejuvenation, I think of when it comes to physical rest, there's active physical rest and passive physical rest. So passive physical rest is the act of sleeping or napping. That's passive, like you passed out. And and then active rest is like yoga, like yin yoga, like you're active, like think tai chi, things like that. So or getting a massage is
Yeah.
also an active rest. So I don't know if that's what you're thinking, Krista, but when you said that, I was like, ooh, pause. Let's take a moment to talk about the different types of
Mhm. Yeah, Crystal also commented, I think rest for me comes from when I escape external demands. So again,
rest.
a lot of us are, in alignment with, how we think of rest and how it's come up for us. And then Larry says, I definitely learned the importance of resting, right? That's the thing I've learned too over the years. Is like, if you don't rest, your body will make
Okay.
you rest. Because
Yeah.
that's what Trisha says in the book too. Like our bodies know, our
And, and
bodies.
so and so that's what I wanted to ask Larry. So what moment, like I wonder, I'm gonna ask this to everybody. What was that defining moment? I mean, we probably have moments, like plural, because we go in and out, but like what is a memory you have where you're like, oh wow, rest is important? Does anyone want story time? Share a like a moment, an experience where you realize that rest is important and I need to prioritize it.
For me, like one vivid recollection memory I have was 2019. I started grad school in the fall. It was go, go, go. Like I would have telework in the morning, grad school in the evening time. Then after that, study for a little bit, then open my laptop for Sultry Sisters, our business, and barely was sleeping. I like always booked myself for like social outings, for meetups with people. And then on the weekends, I would work or have like events to go to. So like I was not resting. I was not sleeping. I was sleep deprived, which she says is a public health crisis, which I myself, as a public health practitioner, am like, damn. But we went to Thanksgiving with our family in Houston, and that was the first time since I started grad school. It was only like 3 months or something that I started grad school, and already being outside of the city, being in a new environment, it was a holiday time, so I was on break. I wasn't doing anything. I remember vividly being like, "Oh, I'm tired." I remember telling myself, like internally, like, "Wow, I didn't realize I was tired," because I was so just in this the monotonous like go go go, like it became a part of the routine, that it wasn't until I stopped that my body was like, oh, this is this is nice, like we missed this. And it took some time since that to cultivate a more healthy habit with rest and sleep, but that is what I remember, that my body told me that, nah, like we can't keep doing this. Even though sometimes you can still push past that, but that's not healthy. But anyways, yeah.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Like, I've definitely had that moment. I had that moment, like, at the beginning of the pandemic. I was like going, 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 working like 3 different performance jobs. Like, I was performing for multiple companies and, doing that grind, right? The hustle,
Hmm.
those words that we will talk about in a
Hmm.
moment. And then when everything, like, when everything, I remember like feeling tired, but like not having time to rest, like physically rest. And then when we had to stay home, I literally slept the first 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And it was insane. Like I didn't realize how sleep deprived I was. And then 2 weeks later I woke up like basically like, you know,
Yeah.
I finally had enough
Yeah.
energy to like do multiple things in one day besides like get up to shower and eat and go back to my bed. And that's where I had that clarity of like, I'm doing too much. I'm never going to do that again. And I have yet to return to that type of schedule. So if it wasn't
Hmm.
for that abrupt stop, I wouldn't have been
Hmm.
able to distinctly No, because I was a high functioning anxiety person.
Mhm.
Like I'm a high functioning like 9 out of 10. And in order for me to like feel that, vroom, I had to like literally like the whole world had to stop, literally. I mean,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
that's my story of my the beginnings of understanding what rest could look like in my life.
Mhm. And then Krista also commented, I love restorative and massages, but also just being physically alone is something I seek out, right? Yeah, and
Mm,
that's one of the types of rest, like
social rest.
social rest. Yeah, like just being with yourself. So that's important. And then Kyle shares, one thought I'm having looking at the types of rest is that using your phone, social media might seem physically restful, but it's definitely not restful in many of those other ways. Yeah, so it's like just, taking a personal inventory of sorts with yourself, right? Like maybe what types of rest are you getting in your life? And then what types of rest are you maybe wanting to cultivate more of, right?
Mhm,
So it's always going to be flowing and changing
mhm.
as we evolve. And then Krista shares, I took a solo trip to Mexico, and it was the first time I could do whatever I want when I wanted, eat what I wanted without having to consider someone else. Right? That's so powerful to just be with yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it's that social rest. It's what you're saying, I feel like it has a bunch of different rests that was in that
Yeah.
book. Sounds like a great rest retreat.
hmm
And then Larry shares having surgery because I didn't give my body the rest it needed. I feel you. I've gotten sick when I didn't rest. Yeah, yeah. Like our bodies, like Trisha said, they will tell us, they will let us know, they will
hmm
rebel, they will
Yes.
resist, and they will make us full stop.
hmm And then Krista mentioned, being in her Airbnb and watching Netflix or only going out for food. And oh yeah, like trying to read as we go, and didn't know the language, so I had to be quiet. And then Krista has, I was forced to be silent, and the internal reflection I did was life changing.
Ooh.
So I love that you had that experience, and I wish for all of us to have experiences like that are restful. And just like a fun fact, in my email signatures, like nowadays I put like have a restful week or something because I'm just like I just want to
Mhm.
spread that to everyone, right?
Yes.
But yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. Of course, the conversations are going to continue, but there's so many juicy quotes and points from the book, so we definitely want to get into that. But feel free to keep commenting, and we'll pull those up as we go.
So if you do have your book, this next section of our discussion, we are going to be discussing and pulling some quotes from the book to add to this conversation of why rest, why now, and why it's a part of our liberation, a part of resistance, a part of, radically healing from the inside out.
Yeah, so speaking of healing, the first quote we wanted to share is from page 7. So, rest is a healing portal to our deepest selves. Rest is care, rest is radical. And that's
Mhm.
definitely in line with what we talk about as Soul Tree Sisters in our collective, because we talk about soul care. So, mind, body, soul, and community is the type of care that we center our work on. And so, reading this was just very affirming for me in the
Mhm.
work that we do and our personal journeys. I was just like, yes, it's just the words like a healing portal, right, to our deepest selves. Just the language that Trisha
The
uses, I
poetry,
felt, yeah,
yes.
I felt it was so soothing to read as well. To be like, yeah, like those are the, I never thought to say that, but yes, it's like that's what I was getting from these sections.
Mhm. And I think a lot of times when people think of social justice or activism, they think of it as something that is confrontational, very much active, and actionable. But rest is an action. Rest is something you're doing. But saying rest is radical, it's like also pointing out like there's a balance to it all in order to sustain,
hmm
social justice movements, sustain ourselves, sustain the community, sustain our family units, this, that, and all of it. We have to acknowledge the balance of it. And that's why rest is radical. It's like without rest, like our bodies, like we need it. And it's
hmm
it's it's obviously part of like way more, which we'll get into. But I like that she's saying that it's radical. And for people who want to like, I'm trying to change the world, change yourself, change inside,
Mhm.
because that's what's going to keep you
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. And it reminds me of in 2020 or 2021, 2020, we did a workshop on radical soul care. And we used some learnings from Deepa Iyer. And she talks about the different roles in the ecosystem, like social change, and how, we don't always have to be frontline responders or nurturers, or sometimes there's caregivers. And I thought of rest and like this rest
Mhm.
movement as kind of like caregivers, as healers, right? Like for if you yourself reading this book in your own community, if you're like, hey, let's have a collective rest time, just come over, we're going to nap together, or we're going to do this restful practice. Like all of that is
Yeah.
radical, and it is
Mhm.
still a part of the greater movement. Because that's something during 2020,
Yeah.
I was like, we don't all have to be doing that. Yes, it's important for folks to do that, but that's not in all of our wheelhouse. Not all of
Mhm.
ourselves have the capacity to do that. So that made me think of that as well, as like how rest is political too. That like by
Mhm.
resting, it is still a part of the greater social justice movement.
Mhm.
Oh,
And I
that goes
also,
to what Krista just shared. Yeah.
yeah, rest as a port. Well, this one, activist
Mhm.
burnout is so real. Yes. I also wanted to jump back to rest as a portal. Really resonated with me. Me too, Krista. As an artist, like I that resonated with me because I have been taking a break from creating, and I've been really focusing on like just enjoying life. And so for me, like that resonated with me at a deeper level, also a spiritual portal. Um, as you can see, I have like my little altar back there. And like I do, I have felt, connected to my ancestors through sleeping, dreaming, and being in a restful energy, like quiet and
Mhm.
solitude. So we'll probably get that into that more in later chapters, but I wanted to pause and be like, yes, it resonated with me
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. And then we go into the 4 tenets of the NAP ministry, right? So so it centers and grounds us in the work of Trisha, and she also goes by the NAP bishops. If you've heard of
Hmm.
that, then that's the same person. So the first tenet is rest is a form of resistance because it disrupts capitalism and white supremacy. I just love how she starts with that. She's like, first tenant. Okay,
Period.
first of all, y'all need to know this. And I'm just like, I'm here for it because that is why. That is just the
Yes, it's
truth.
not rest is not an aesthetic. It's not just cute,
Hmm.
Mhm. And then number 2 is our bodies are a site of liberation. And I loved that. Like
Hmm.
our bodies being a site of liberation. Like talk about embodiment, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like when she talks about our bodies and our bodies having this already way of knowing, this innate knowing and wisdom. I think of somatic work, and that's what her work is rooted in as well, somatics and embodiment, and that's also aligned with the work we do. So I think that's why I'm very much so aligned with what she shares. And then I see Krista shared as a writer and healer. I feel so disconnected when I'm not in a restful state, right? So it is very
Mhm.
important for not only our well-being, but also for creatives to be able to get into that creative flow, to be able that's part of the 7 rest too, creative rest. So it's important for many different reasons, and not just to be productive, which kind of goes
You with
into
Kyle.
what Kyle is just sharing. That one tension he's dealing with in the book is the idea that rest is necessary to do good work and for the movement, but that we don't have to think of productivity as the reason why we should want to rest. And I'm like, that's a good thing to reflect on, right? Because we kind of have been conditioned that like we should either don't sleep at all or only sleep so you can't get up and work all day. So I feel like it's like an extreme thing. I feel like that I've been taught or conditioned that there's not really just that middle, just like resting to rest. Um, and
I feel like that's the capitalism part that Kyle's talking about, because that's how rest in some places are sold to us. Like, rest so you can be productive, rest so you can not have those, certain, like, when they talk about like certain hormones, that like cortisol levels, like they get really sciencey about it, and very like, do this so so I'm going to sell you this resting kit or whatever. So I think for me, it's like
Mhm.
some people will push for rest with the thought that you'll be doing more because of that. So correct me if I'm wrong. That's why I'm getting the gist of the tension, right? Like, just rest just because.
Yeah. Yeah, not in just so you can produce more.
Mhm.
So then that goes into our third tenet, which is naps provide a portal to imagine, invent, and heal. And I just love this as an adult now, of just, going back to, our childlike ways of napping. And I feel like as I got older, I was conditioned to like, oh, you only nap when like you're sick or like there's something wrong with you, like not just to nap. So I appreciate Trisha just creating her whole platform, and a lot of her work is centered around this whole idea of napping. And it's so beautiful.
Yes. I mean, I bought myself, y'all, an adult cot. You know those cots you had when you were a little kid in daycare, them little cots. When I first moved into my Pilates studio, this is where the tension is, Kyle. Like, because I was like, oh, I'm here. Like, I have a split shift. I'm gonna have a cot there so I can stay at work, But so I'm gonna admit,
I can work longer.
the energy of the cot at first was definitely not on this rest of the resistance. It was like, work, 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 work.
Rest for
It was
survival.
giving Riri. It was giving Riri. But the thing about it, like, the cot was like a great way for me to balance that. But in my new studio, I did not bring that cot. That cot is not there, because I'm like, if I'm tired, I go home. There's a cutoff. There's a boundary, and I will not sleep. I will not sleep in this space because I don't need to. So like that's my level up, y'all.
That's so funny. And then the fourth tenet is our dream space has been stolen. We want it back. We will reclaim it via rest. And again, I was like, yes. Okay. So I feel like these tenets really helps us understand, one, her work and what is rooted in, but also just like a basis of like, this is what we're talking when we talk about rest. Like all these other things, sure, all these other things, maybe, I don't know, but this is like the foundation, the platform that she speaks on. And I appreciated how the tenets were very just clear and concise. Yeah, like obviously she had a whole intro to like talk about them, but on its own, I feel like I got the gist. They're like, okay, I understand what's happening here.
Yeah, tying it all together.
Yeah.
Yes. So what do y'all think when our dream space and how it's been stolen and we want it back, and we reclaim it via rest? I did a piece last year called Ashe Ibalik, and it's the two different languages. One is from the Akan tribe in Africa, and one is the Tagalog language from the Philippines. And it means you have the power to reach back and reclaim what is rightfully yours. And here we are, the dream space. So I just appreciate how, I don't know if other people here can relate, of how like our life happens in themes, and like things that we do later on are affirmed in writing or affirmed by our relationships. But like this fourth tenet for me is like, when I think about the dream space has been stolen, I think about like our time, like you said, to be imaginative, to create, to just like create, to create. Like, I'm going to create another stream of income by creating, y'all know what I mean?
Yes.
That entrepreneur life, like, oh, I like knitting. Oh, you're good at it. Sell things. Like, no. That's capitalism. See, telling you have to turn all your hobbies into like, just make things to make things, think of ideas and then let them go like butterflies, like Tony has on her shirt. So that's like,
Yeah.
obviously you can see I've been activated by number 4.
Holy Spirit, activate.
As a creative, I'm like, I can just create, so I don't have to share it. So that's what that means to me.
Yeah. That's what this year, my intention is, through softness and connecting to spirit. It's just doing different creative practices just for fun. Like I started the year off taking pottery lessons, painting. I've been walking in nature. So just being. as my restful intentions for the year. But also the fact of like reclaiming it. I appreciate in the intro too how she names how our ancestors did rest, right? Like maybe it looked different, but for them to be able to like get through and survive, shadow slavery, the atrocities of like Jim Crow, like all these crazy things that, white supremacy, capitalism, all that stuff had created. There was some rest practices in there. And that's what I learned through my pleasure herbalism
Mm.
course too, with her hood herbalism, is that like we are here, like our beings today are here because our, elders, our ancestors, our foremothers, people have had some sort of practice of rest, of collective care, right? Like when our ancestors were sowing seeds into their hair, right? That was a part of the collective healing that they knew these herbs, these plants heal me and my people. So we will take them with us. And just like, I've read different like historical fictions, and sometimes they're just like laying under a tree and stuff. Like, yes, it's still like on a enslaved plantation, but like there were still moments of
Mhm.
rest despite
Mhm.
this, right? So I feel like that helps me be reminded that even in all of this matote madness of capitalism, of white supremacy, of the Karens, all these crazies, I can still find rest, like internally, and cultivate that space in my physical spaces that I occupy as well.
And I resonate with this too, Krista. The dream space is so important for ancestral downloads. So you were also activated by the fourth tenet. Yes, I call them early morning whispers. So
Mhm.
there's been times like I'll like just wake up like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I will hear a message, and it definitely feels like an ancestral download. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm. Yeah, Chris also shares how she really enjoyed the quote from Trisha's grandmother about all eyes ain't shut. Yes, I really
Mhm.
resonated with that part as well. I think I might even start it. I'm like, let me see if I can find the exact thing to read it for
Yeah.
everyone in case people aren't reading with us.
Let's find it.
I was like, yes.
And I love how this book is a manifesto. So like
Mhm.
Trisha is sharing like her personal like anecdotes of like how rest has been shared with her, or her first encounters through her family
Yes,
members.
I found it. So on page six,
Okay, page 6, y'all.
it's every shut eye ain't sleep. I'm resting my eyes and listening for what God wants to tell me. So yes, and that was
Mm.
a snippet of it. But page 6, y'all. So yeah, I appreciate her sharing how she was, influenced and rooted in her work from her foremothers, from her elders, from her ancestors, and that so much of the work in Black liberation, in womanism, Black feminist thought, and Afrofuturism, right? Like, yes, Afrofuturism is creating new realities and dream spaces, but it's also
Mhm.
very much rooted in our histories, and how she also has the term micro histories, what I appreciated too.
And then I want to share this next quote that we wanted to highlight is, we need each other in more ways than we are allowed to believe. This work is about radical community care. Like, I love that because, there's personal and there's communal. And I like how she was wanting to name that part of rest is being, radically in community care. Think about like, um, I'm going to use Tony. This might be more you, but when I think about this quote and what it looks like, the dynamic is like when you have a baby, like, in some cultures, like you're able to rest because a whole like your foremothers and family helps you, whereas like sometimes in certain cultures, like you're just you and the baby, the mom and the baby. So when I think about, we need each other in more ways than we are allowed to believe, like the individualism of it, the individualism, like it's me, I did this on my own. Like, no, like I feel like this work is about radical community care. Also, the community care is outside of like our relationship like with people on this earth, but also the relationship with our ancestors and the divine. Like, we're radically in community, like they're caring for us, they're sharing us messages, we're following their lead. So for me, like this quote kind of shows the holistic approach that Trisha's trying to share with us when it comes to rest.
Mm-hmm. And I think also like the collective aspect, right? So collectivism versus individualism. And I think the pandemic, especially 2020, when the quarantine and shutdown was happening, I feel like a lot of people really, that was the first time of them realizing like, I'm alone, right? Like, or they had to be forced to be alone. And then how that was difficult, right? If someone was sick, if you just didn't have things like the social aspect of being isolated, like, and how those impacts we're still seeing now today. And the further we get into this, but yeah, that like, even though you might be like physically healthy or whatever, if you don't have that collective healing, that communal care, you'll still have deficits in your well-being and your wellness. So there's, different parts of it. So I also appreciate her naming that for us, especially in the work that we do. And that goes into the next quote we wanted to share was, even those who claim to be part of the wellness industry are pushing, hustling, grinding, capitalism, girl boss, competition, and co-opting the work of Indigenous practices for clout and money. So that's on page 19. But yeah, so much so of our work as Soultree. This is why the inception of our collective, because we were seeing spaces like that. And we're like, hold up, you're saying you have a wellness space for people to come to feel restful, to feel rejuvenated, to feel self-care, and you're charging $150 for 30 minutes. It's like, no, like, make it make sense.
Let me give you the simplest example of the wellness industry taking rest and capitalizing it. Retreats. These retreats being thousands of dollars in order to rest and reset. I'm not against a retreat, y'all. I'm not against it. But to sell it as that's the only way you can get the recharge, you have to invest, like, like, make the personal investment. Like, to me, that is the wellness industry speaking versus like, because you can do all those things to rest and reset without spending a dime. It's a choice. But sometimes capitalism wraps it up and says, no, this is the only way. This one pill, this one practice, this one place, this one person. And so for me, that's what this quote brings up for me. Clearly, I'm activated once again.
Yeah, this is so much in the work that we do. And we have done a workshop before on decolonizing wellness and what that looks like in our specific cultures. But yeah, it's just those spaces didn't feel right to me. That's why I haven't really been to a yoga studio in like I have been, but I haven't connected and felt it resonated with me in many years, like 5+ years, because I go and then I'm just like, this isn't the energy that I feel inside. Like there would be a dissonance. I'd be like, okay, I know what rest feels like. I know what, soul care feels like for me, what being in tune with my body. And then they would do these other things. And I'm like, oh, I feel disconnected. And for a while I didn't have the language. I was just like, oh, I don't like studios, I guess. Like, I just like a home practice, which is true. I do like it. But when I found the right people and the right community, I was like, oh no, like there are people who get it. So it is also about, like who you're around. And like, taking inventory of like, the spaces you are in, the spaces you occupy. Like if you are a wellness practitioner, like, no offense, everyone, does need to make money sometimes, but like, are you part of like a corporate space that tends to co-opt things from Indigenous communities? Are you a part of, a more mutual aid collective care group who, is doing different community rooted initiatives, like just things like that, when especially comes to wellness. That's why Soultree, like our whole thing is about curating and creating spaces that are like accessible and affordable for our community, because we didn't have it for ourselves.
Yes. And I love this on the conversation. Krista shares, my home is a space I curate to bring others in to rest and get grounded. One of my favorite friend things is to invite folks over and give them a spa experience, tea, baths, candlelight, and a bed. See, I love that. That's that community care. That's that, sharing where you're abundant, like having all those things and sharing it with friends. And oh yes, this part, second part, sometimes we need our loved ones to do what I call Put us down. Yes. Yes.
Yes, I love that. And I can vouch and support what Krista is sharing because yeah, Krista and Collier Home is just very, yeah, like restful, restorative, just all the healing energies, like ever since the first time I went there. But also I was sick before I came to California this December. And usually I'm just sick in my own apartment and I'm like, I'm fine. Like I do my own healing things, but I don't always let people take care of me. And I was in their home and I was able to be taken care of. So I feel that. And I'm just like, yes, y'all do a great job of doing that. So thank you. And I'm grateful to be in community with y'all.
Yes. And I love this. To add to Chris's point, as an alternative to the retreat model, can be done with your chosen community. I love that. Let us know in the chat if you also practice, that type of community care of, painting each other's nails or offering a bed, bath, massage. I love it. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm. And the next quote we wanted to share, also, as we're sharing the quotes that resonate with us, definitely put in the comments if there's any other quotes that really resonated with y'all, and we will bring those up as well. But the next quote is, the way we hold ourselves and others to the lie of urgency is white supremacy culture, and we will never be able to rest or be liberated from oppression while we are honoring and aligning with it. Like, you
the
can't,
lie of urgency.
Exactly. The lie.
The
Yes,
lie.
I have. That came up for me. Was it this summer? Like there was a lot of things going on with work and different stuff. And I think it was through my pleasure herbalism course. Like we had talked about this too, like how urgency is just not a natural element. Like nature is slow. Nature's medicine is slow, right? You plant a seed, it will sprout, perhaps, and then it will grow, and then it may harvest something.
Depending
but it's
on the nurturing of that plant.
It's a slow process. You can't like when you try to fast in with all these GMOs, what does that do? Craziness. But yeah, so that has come up for me of like letting go and releasing this sense of urgency and really just being in the now has been super helpful for my personal journey.
Love that. Another quote that that really resonated too, like urgency being alive, but now grieving in this culture is not done and is seen as a waste of time because grieving is a powerful place of reverence and liberation. That for me really like made me pause because when you think about that, like is grieving really like embraced in this culture? Like not, we haven't even grieved what we've gone through with the pandemic. Like there's been no collective grieving. Like, so the news, so like maybe like I personally, y'all let me know if you've had a community or someplace that has a collective grieving of this, but not to
there's a collective amnesia or like a collective just like moving on, brushing it to the side. But yeah, it was tough. That's why I think 2020 especially was super hard for me mentally and spiritually and emotionally because I wasn't able to grieve. And so my whole life was like changed, right? Like I moved to the DC area to go to school in person, but then now I had to go to school virtually. I was like, I didn't want to be a virtual learner. And then like things with my job fell through. Then like, not being able to see my family for a long period of time, like being isolated, like hearing about death and loss so frequently. In a space of I felt hopeless after a while because even though I was studying the disease, it was like, what can I do? So yeah, I felt like we had to push through. Like there was a little bit of time of, I think more like a shock. I feel like there was a collective shock, but not a collective grieving of like healing through what you're going through. I feel like it took me a long time in my own personal journey to just grieve what was lost in my own life through the pandemic.
And the next quote we want to share is, we have some comments. Krista shares, I had the opportunity to lead a grief workshop at work, and I thought no one would show up, and so many people showed up. Folks want to grieve, and grieve in community. We are starved for it.
Yeah, I appreciate, Krista, you mentioned grieving in community, because I think in our society, we give space for grieving, but it's small and it's like to yourself. Like maybe you could take off to grieve, but not to do it like with your colleagues, or like sometimes even like in our family dynamic, I feel like it's very private. It's not necessarily like we come together and be like, okay, we're going to do this like, practice to like honor the person, or that's more so me and my sister's individual practices, but we didn't necessarily learn that from our families. So I think that's super important, like the collective aspect of the grieving process. And then Kyle shares, we are all collectively dissociating. Yes, I think that was the word I was searching for. Yep. Regarding the pandemic. Definitely not grieving or healing, right? It's like a dissociation, just like, oh, it's over there. I don't have to think about it, which, I think is doing a disservice for ourselves. Like, if we're not able to fully grieve something, then how are we able to fully show up as ourselves, right? How are we able to fully take in the joys of life, the pleasures of life, and just be, if we have these things kind of weighing us down that we aren't able to articulate or to express and release?
And that's part of that rest, emotional rest. So part of emotional rest is being able to honor your truth. So having to always be like, I'm okay. Everything's great. Toxic positivity. I'm okay. I'm past it. That is not being able to emotionally rest, because people think emotionally rest means I don't have emotions. Emotions are paused. No, emotional rest is having the space and capacity to share how you truly feel so you can process it. That's emotional rest, the processing, the filtering through the feelings. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it looks ugly because you're ugly crying. Sometimes it's grieving. Sometimes it's yelling, whatever you have to do to get the guff out, the matote madness. So that's, to me, taps into emotional rest.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into the next quote, which rest is a portal. Silence is a pillow, Sabbath our lifeline, pausing our compass, go get your healing, be disruptive, push back, slow down, take a nap. I was like, okay, I feel like it could be a little song too.
There's a moment to push back, slow down, take a nap. Like poetry, like I said, I had a little dance. Rest is a portal, silence a pillow, Sabbath lifeline, pausing a compass, go get your healing. Be disrupted, push back, slow down. You know what I'm saying?
So yes, make it your own, remix it. She does mention that in the book too, remix it, make it your own. But yeah, I love just this concept of a portal, because I feel like a portal to me, when I envision it, right, my visioning practice is like, I see it accessible. Like a portal to me seems like doors, I feel like open and close. And I feel like a portal is just like a space that I can go into. So that's kind of like her use of language. And then silence as a pillow. And I loved her talk of silence too, because since I was a child, I was like, I love quiet. I love silence. Like I love just being, and there's like nothing else that I can tell is existing with me.
She will work in silence, y'all. She would just sit in silence. She would play in silence.
I lived during the pandemic. I was going multiple days in silence. I was like, this is great. I was like, and going on walks in silence. Yeah. So it's just, I felt so seen and heard to have her write that down. I was like, oh my God, my little inner being, little Tony knew. Little Tony was like, yes.
Thank you for sharing this, Krista. I'm not sure this tribe either. In Africa, they do their collective grieving practices that are so beautiful. They do a collective wailing session. I don't know about y'all, but like I've never done a collective wailing session, but there's definitely time I'm like, oh, like I just love that collective, like I've done that in like different yoga classes, or just honestly just naturally let out like a cry. Also, I've had, Krista, I agree with you. The best sleep after a good cry. I cried yesterday and I had a really good sleep. And this is something that's new to me, y'all. I usually am not the one to cry. Like I don't let myself, but part of my resting practice, emotional rest, has been allowing myself to purify thyself through crying.
Yay. And then I'm the opposite. I've been crying all the time. Like crying is like, it's like I talk or I cry. It's just like, it's one. It's just my body processes and releases. It's like, oh, either I download it and store it in, or I'm like, cry, release out. And also in traditional Chinese medicine, crying is a liver cleanse. So if you are someone who you're like, why do I need to cry? It's good for your body, good for your spirit, okay, good for your mind.
The next quote we want to share is, Rest is resistance because it's a counter narrative to the script of capitalism and white supremacy for all people, you know, and we're saying for all people, like all of y'all can get this rest.
It's like the more the merrier. Like Oprah, you can get one. You can have like all of us rest, rest, rest. Look under your chairs right now. You got a big package of rest waiting for you.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then rest is a connection and path back to our true nature. So I feel like that goes into what I just shared. Right, when I was younger, I had this innate knowing, but what society and people around me were kind of like, yeah, I don't know what that is. But I'm glad that that was a part of me, because I feel like that has shaped in how I show up and how I show up, especially for myself. Like, because I do like silence, because I do like slowness. It helps me now reclaim that through, this part of my
Mhm.
journey.
These next quotes, y'all, is gonna get into the deeper reason of like why Trisha is so passionate about sharing the gospel, the good gospel of resting, and the four tenets. Is this quote: "The legacy of brutality surrounding labor, sustenance, and survival for those enslaved on plantations and their descendants is striking, and that's why I uplift sleep deprivation as a justice issue." She
Mhm.
again naming it. Like, this is deeper than y'all think. This is, you think it's deep, go a little deeper. The
Mhm.
legacy of brutality surrounding labor. It goes into the next quote, which is capitalism is from the plantation. I'm gonna just stop right there.
Mhm. Exactly.
Capitalism is from the plantation. This nation was born on capitalism. The teat
Mhm.
is still there. Just, you know what I'm saying? Our current system of labor was made from this paradigm. So we're not, it's a different version. You know, knowing this shifted me too, and must be acknowledged as part of our deprogramming process from grind culture.
Mhm.
Like I had to reread that a couple times, y'all.
Mhm.
I had to read actually there's like it was like 3 pages, like the page before that into that page and the next, from page 37 to 39, y'all.
Mhm.
She was talking about she talked a little bit about the history, shared an anecdote of a passage of like what
Mhm.
was like for enslaved folks, for our
Mhm.
ancestors, if you are from the descendants of
Mhm.
um, people who've been enslaved here, of that they had no time to rest.
Mhm.
They had no food either, like barely. Sometimes they would not get all their meals if there was a lot of production to happen.
Mhm.
How many times, and I thought about how many times I forget to eat, how many times I'm like, it was just so humbling. Like it made me sad. It made me sad that some of my choices perpetuate the harm and brutality of my ancestors. And it made me like get activated, which is why I slept until 9 o'clock a.m. today.
Nice. Yeah, I have been sleeping in since I've been back for the winter break. But yeah, like, so it's one thing. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Alyssa. Like, right, like when you hear these things, right, it's like just a whole process of emotions that you're processing. But I think it's one of those things, like, once you know, then now you can make the choice to not do that. So it's not necessarily having to, like, beat ourselves up, like, oh my God, why was I like so into grind culture? Like, why was I not sleeping? But it's more like giving yourself grace and compassion, that like I showed up in this way because of how I was programmed and conditioned from society and from these
Mhm.
other places. But now knowing and now having this book, this community to support you, you can choose otherwise. So I
It
just share that with everyone.
Yeah, everyone, like, and like also what Krista says, thinking about getting what we are owed, you know.
Hmm.
And I think Trisha a little bit talks about like the reparations of it all, like,
Hmm.
and being able to like take back and just honor, like it's a way of honoring, our ancestors. It can be bigger than us. It doesn't have to be just about we need 8 hours of sleep, the science of it. It can be the spirit of it,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
reclaiming of it.
And I wanted to mention too, like through reading this intro, like with grind culture, how so much is internalized. Like, yes, there's parts of it that we're like, oh, that's not for me, that's for me. But like when we don't eat, when we're not sleeping well, when we work a little bit past our work boundary times, these different things, sometimes it's internalized where we don't even realize we're doing those things. So I think it really is a journey. Like she mentioned, it's a lifelong process. It's a practice, like to show up and show up for yourself in these ways. It's not a one time, you're not going to read this book one time and then, oh, all of a sudden you're just this restful being that never, does these things. But I appreciate like just hearing her words and being able to reflect on like how a lot of times, like, especially when she mentions like this is a practice, rest is a practice for the Black liberation movement, which goes against like, with some people, like rappers singing songs with like some of our like celebrities that people idolize are perpetuating capitalism,
Mhm.
right? Not saying
I go
everyone and all
hard in the
things.
paint.
Yeah, like not everything and all things in those industries are that way, but so much so is. And that's, I think, how it becomes internalized. We're like, oh, well, everyone's like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And it's like, but why? So those things I think are important to pause when we notice those things or see those things happening and be like, that I see what's happening there and I don't have to make that choice. And it is another thing that she mentioned, like rest is deliberate and intentional, right? Like we're not just gonna be like, oh, I'm just like a restful being now. Like we have to be like, nah, I'm resting. Like I put do not disturb on my phone so my work contacts can't just be talking to me off hours. Because like you have to be deliberate. You have to create those systems and those routines and those rituals to support your rest journey. And I'm excited that we started this conversation to start the year. I feel like there's so much just synergy and energy here that I can't wait to see like how our reflections build throughout this month.
Mhm. And Krista shared a quote that she highlighted was sleep deprivation is a public health issue and a
Mhm.
spiritual issue. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that because that's another part of what Trisha's getting at is like, this is a public health issue, but also a spiritual issue. And that's part of like liberation, like connecting to self, but also connecting to spirit. But, in Soul Tree Sister, we talk about aligning the mind, body, spirit, and community, like spirit, soul. And so I really appreciated that quote. Thank you for sharing that, Krista.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to add too is this like affirmation that she gives us in the book too. Like she says throughout, like we are enough, but she also had the affirmation like you are worthy of care. And I think especially like Black and Brown folks that are descendants of enslaved ancestors is that yeah, like we are worthy of care. We are worthy of rest. And I want us all to just like sit on that
Mhm.
and take that with us this next week as we then meet next Wednesday as
Mhm.
well. That you are worthy, you are enough, and we'll come back to that.
Yes. So, last question to y'all. How are you feeling after reading the intro? How are you feeling after this discussion? If you haven't started reading the book, let us know how are you feeling after the quotes we've uplifted in this conversation. Let us know if you plan on joining us for the rest of our book club series. We'd love to hear what are some of your takeaways from today's discussion. You can share one word, one sentence. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so after reading the intro and then sharing today in our first book club session, I'm feeling affirmed. I feel like, especially reading it, to like hear Trisha's language, I just felt very affirmed of like, okay, I'm on the right path, right? And I feel seen and supported on this path. In this conversation, I just was super excited to talk and have dialogue around this. That's why Alyssa and I have these book clubs because we like talking to each other when we read these books, but we're like, no, like we need to talk to more people. So it's been so great to have you all share your perspectives and reflections as we start off, because that got me super excited too to hear how all of you, took in different parts of the book and what resonated and whatnot. Oh, yay. Krista says, I'm ready to get into it. I'm excited to join the NAP ministry. Yes, definitely follow the NAP ministry on Instagram. She has a website as well. And then Kyle said, empowered to work slower and take more naps. Yes.
Yes.
Snaps to that.
And
And
then
Tiara mentioned, I have the book on hold at the library. Yes, to the library, supporting the public library. But it was great to hear the quotes you shared. Awesome. Yes, there's no pressure to read everything before you show up for the next session. You could just be here to listen, to discuss with us, because we will have quotes here that we will uplift. But if you have read it, that's awesome. If you have friends or family members or people in your network who you think would enjoy the book club, definitely have them join us. So we'll be on YouTube and Facebook Live every Wednesday, same time, same place.
The replays will be available all this whole series. So make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our book club playlist.
Yes. So thank you all. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.